And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, is a man who isn't a hack, but he wouldn't mind taking a few once he's on the ball field. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Doing all right, Kieran. I'm going to stick to softball swings these days. Don't want to embarrass myself too much. We did have a fun discussion. Is it ever acceptable to swing and miss in softball? I think it's a hard no. I just not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying it's never acceptable.
All right, so for real quick context on that, I did have a strikeout in slow pitch softball recently, but it's a one-pitch league, and the ball was over my head, and I just didn't want to walk. So you guys can tell us if that's acceptable or not. You can at Cody Stavenhagen, at Kieran_Steckley. Is that an acceptable way? Because I agree with your general premise. I just think my specific circumstances make an exception, but we'll see. It is certainly acceptable to swing and miss when you are going up against one Jackson Jobe. Actually, I would love to step in the box against any of these guys with the real electric stuff, just because, like, I wouldn't even try to. I would Andy Ibanez it. I just want to see what that's like to like have the ball move like that, coming at you. I've obviously never experienced anything like that. I think it'd be a lot of fun, George Plimpton style. So Jackson Jobe was kind of the talk of camp today, Cody, because we got our first like kind of game-ish action with him. And the term that we have here on the graphic is electric. So you were there, you saw, you watched. It's not your first Jackson Jobe experience. What was the electricity of Jackson Jobe today?
It was a reminder that this guy should be on the team. And it's really not a very hard decision. I mean, his stuff is just different. I would argue maybe even different than like Tarek Skubals, but no one else on the Tigers staff comes close in terms of just sheer potency of the pitch mix. The fastball velocity is nasty. We know he has good breaking stuff. The changeup's become his best pitch. But one thing Jackson Jobe did not do as well as he wanted to last year was miss bats, induce swing and miss. He can do this with the best of them, and he did an okay level in the minors, but not really an elite level. So what did he do? Went back to the drawing board, altered his pitch mix. He's thrown this nasty, huge sweeper that we've raved about for years. Started realizing it was hard to get hitters to chase. It's not really a pitch he could land in the zone very well. If he did, they wouldn't miss it. So he adopts a curveball. Truer curveball, a little bit more north-south. This is our first time seeing this live. Maybe I think there's some video of Jobe facing a hitter at like his facility in Oklahoma, but this is probably his first time facing like real live hitters. He's thrown in the game stadium. This curveball was sick, dude. I'm telling you, it was nasty. It didn't appear to really pop out of his hand. It looked like a game-ready pitch. He faced Ryan Kreidler, Jace Young. I want to say Winsel Perez was the third batter. Not positive on that one. They all were fooled at times by the curveball. Jobe was really pleased with it. Robin Lund was pleased with it. Jake Rogers was raving about it afterward. And the other stuff happened to look really good too. Like, for reference, Reese Olson had thrown right before Jobe, and I thought Reese looked really good. His stuff was moving, east-west all over the place. And I was like, okay, Reese. And then Jackson showed up, and it's like, I felt like the difference between like a high school pitcher and a D1 pitcher. Like, it was just a different level. We've talked about not wanting to overreact to bullpens and live BPs. But even just watching this guy, it's a reminder of just how good he is, how good he can be. Of course, he will have to execute some of his pitches better. He'll have to continue to locate and get ahead with the fastball. We'll see if this curveball holds up on every fifth day or whatever. But if I'm Scott Harris and I'm watching that, I don't know, man. That, like you said last episode, those aren't really bullets I want to be wasting in AAA.
Yeah, and there's an element to Jobe right now that I can't kind of get out of my head, and it actually somewhat has nothing to do with him. I go back to our Tarek Skubal conversation, which you can go listen to that episode, watch it on YouTube. It's very fascinating. There's even some hardcore pitcher stuff in there for you Hardys out there. He talked about the like fastball got me here, fastball gonna get people out at the major league level, and he found out the hard way that's not always the case. This is not an indictment of previous administrations or coaches who I'm sure were all capable and had an idea of how to do their job. So I don't want to that way.
Some of them did.
However, that's not my main point here. However, you have to think that with AJ, with Fetter, with Lund, with the entire infrastructure, with everybody behind the scenes, that although we can expect a learning curve for Jackson Jobe, just like anybody else, you would wager that that's going to be an easier one to steer than what Skubal went through, what Mize went through, what probably the majority of other guys around the league are going to have to go through if you believe in the infrastructure the Tigers have built all the same. So is that as solid? We haven't talked about that being a reason to keep or to have Jobe not break north with the team, but break west with the team, is that you have everything in place to curve what will be rookie struggles, but it's not going to be, in theory, be as pronounced because you have talent and then you have coaching infrastructure to get the most out of him sooner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I mean, obviously the Tigers know what they're doing with pitching. We say that all the time. You would think they would know what to do with a top-notch pitching prospect like Jackson Jobe. Yeah, more time around Chris Fetter, Robin Lund. In theory, that could not hurt him. And AJ Hinch didn't want to set expectations. He had a good quote that was like, all that does is set limitations, and I don't want to do that. I would say I don't want to set expectations kind of in another sense. It's just like you just never know. I don't know that Jobe is going to come out and be Paul Skeens. I don't know that he's going to have a sub-3 ERA. I do think he can be very good. As you said, there will be some growing pains. I think some of the struggles, not even struggles, but like inconsistencies he's had with execution do remind me of a young Skubal. But I think he's more advanced than even Skubal was at that stage in his career. And certainly the stuff just plays on a different level than Mize and Manning. The arsenal is more varied. So there's going to be some learn on the fly, I think, regardless of where he's at or what level or who's coaching him. But in theory, there's a good system in place to get the best out of this guy.
Yeah, and he certainly validated all the I would say pitcher over position player debates to this point, still a lot to be written at the time of his drafting.
He'd still have a nice shortstop.
To his extent, he has validated them, is what I'm saying. To his extent, he has validated them. And to that end, you compared him to a young Skubal. Skubal was obviously a college pitcher. He was older. Like, Skubal had a lot more pitching years and therefore, in theory, pitching know-how under his belt than Jackson Jobe, who essentially, since he's been a pro, has been learning on the fly because he has never dedicated his life to pitching up until he was drafted. Even then, it's really a year later because they didn't have him do anything after he was drafted. So, like, in addition to being a young guy, he is really a young pitcher. And I think that would be – that's something to keep in mind both ways. That's something to keep in mind in terms of how you judge him with the intricacies of and feels for pitching in a major league game, but also like the way to be excited for what he could be, if that makes sense. And as we talked about last week, Scott Harris, he's a draft pick guy. He loves him some draft picks. You're probably not going to have as good a chance at picking up one of those picks with a prospect as you would a Jackson Jobe this season. So, like, never say never on that, but when this opportunity, that's why they put that in the CBA. When this opportunity comes along, it's kind of hard to like turn it down. So I like how you started that. Looked like it's not even particularly close that he should be in the major league.
Is that an overreaction? Am I doing what I hate, overreacting to like one little thing in spring training? Maybe I am.
Well,
or there's just like any
You're
scout can watch that and be like, that's special. So
validating what you already thought. So it's not like you
sure.
watched it and then you were like, man, he's got electric stuff. We knew he had electric stuff. So,
Yeah.
but so
And with this whole curveball thing, like I do want to see it again. You know, it was great today. Will it be as good next time out? That's something to watch for in his first spring training outing and really for the rest of spring.
well, another thing though to watch out for, Cody, is one Casey Mize. We've talked a little bit about Casey Mize. We both have holdouts is a good way to put it. Like I've talked for years about like it just you watch a full Casey Mize outing and you're kind of getting there, and then he gives up the 3 runs. You see what I'm saying? And the location is you can tell the location is not where it's supposed to be, and like all these kind of things. And he's injured. All this stuff. You wrote about him and you talked with him, and he's a guy that, and we'll talk about a couple here later, he's a guy that, to paraphrase an Ernie Harwell, could be like the house on the side of the road as the team goes by, because like as of now he's not slotted in there as of now. But you read his words, you read your story and all these numbers, and it's like you kind of want him still to be there, Cody. Like the graphic we have right here, can't quit Casey Mize. I can tell you this much: I'm not quitting.
No, I certainly would not give up on this guy. I don't know when it's all going to click, but he very much falls in that bucket of it's not really a guy you want to see going to another organization, because he's always been kind of this one click away from putting it all together, and it hasn't happened, and it's been frustrating. And I've been critical of Mize as a pitcher at times, just like the inability to generate bats. Like you got to call it what it is. But Casey's so thoughtful. He's so smart. He puts in the work, and he checked off a couple of spring training cliches. He went to Driveline, which not many notable Tigers pitchers have done in the past few years, but he said he wanted different eyes on him, different opinions on him. Kind of an interesting comment. And he's toying with some new pitches. He's now got 3 variations of the slider, the one he threw last year, a bigger one that's more of a sweeper, and I guess another one that's it's a little more north-south, a little more depth to it. And that's all in effort to miss bats, generate swing and miss. But maybe the most interesting thing he said, he wants to get back to using the splitter more. Because I kind of almost had a theory that, like, maybe we got to stop labeling Mize like, oh, he's the splitter guy, because that's what he was out of the draft. That's what he was, why he's the number 1 pick. But as he's evolved, that's not really his game. The splitter has not been very good for him in the major leagues. It has a negative run value. But Mize said he wants to get back to it. He does still view it as his calling card. He hopes in an effort to do that, he can throw the 4-seam, still throw it up in the zone, but also begin using it down in the zone a little bit to kind of create a different look for the hitter, so that when a hitter sees something down, they don't automatically assume splitter and take, if that makes any sense. So these are some of the things Casey is working on. A lot of tinkering, a lot of tweaks. Mize has always kind of done this. I watched his bullpen the other day. It was, I don't know, it was fine. I feel like the command wasn't 1,000% sharp. He threw a few nice sliders, kind of got some awkward swings. I didn't have the best angle, but I didn't think he threw many splitters. If he did, definitely not any that totally fooled the hitter or whatever. So I'll be interested to watch him. He's going to throw, I believe, Sunday against the Yankees in Tampa. It is hard to see where he slots in, assuming we're putting Jackson Jobe in this rotation. Kenta Maeda is going to be on this roster somehow. Mize would have to pitch really well, and probably Maeda would have to pitch poorly enough to get moved to the pin. But if Casey Mize can do a couple of the right things, he could certainly be an option for the Tigers this year. Still waiting on a couple things to click, but the ingredients are there, and I noted this in my story. Last year, frustrating as it was at times, highest ground ball rate of his career, highest first pitch strike percentage of his career. So improve the stuff a little bit, you got a good recipe.
So he should be noted. He's going to turn 28 this season. So and you look at like his profile, it's like, he doesn't have that much time left before you start getting into major free agency stuff. So It's not quite there, but it's kind of shocking when you look at it for the first time. And also, there's a quote in there, Cody, that I really liked, and it's such a my self-reflection that it's like, of course he's looking at it this way. And also, I don't know if we get this understanding under another regime, but he's like, as my body changed, the way I move around the mound, the pitch has changed coming out of my hand, talking about the splitter. And I just love that Tommy John, back injury, just general, like you write your stories, like, more muscular, just general, like the body is still changing in the 20s, so like, and such an elastic motion that is pitching, like that would make sense that that's an adjustment too. And if he is able to kind of better know his body, maybe better know it than he has his entire professional career, at least major league career, like that's something that could net like a positive impact on, and maybe get something closer to what he was drafted to be. I just thought that was like really good.
It was an interesting quote, and one I wish I could have dove into a little bit deeper, but that would have been probably a whole 20-minute sidetrack conversation with Casey, and I think he was about ready to get out of the clubhouse, so we didn't fully go into that. I am curious how the body affects the way his splitter moved. Last year, he just thought having a healthy back would help the splitter if he was able to, quote unquote, apply the brakes coming down the slope that could help get the right action on a splitter. Didn't really work out that way. So not entirely sure the full explanation of that quote, but it is interesting. And it does kind of confirm the theory that it is a little bit of a different pitch than it was the day he was drafted.
Yeah. And somewhat of a victim of the team's success. He's not the only one, but a victim of the team's success, because there's enough here that you would like to give still some runway, but when the stakes are raised, sometimes you can't always afford to do that at the same level. Real quick, Cody, let's go to a listener submitted question. Comes from Christian. AJ Hinch is kind of getting up the top of top managers and baseball lists, and obviously these things are arbitrary, but then I was like, well, that's maybe the last arbitrary thing left in baseball, with all the stats and analytics and everything being scrutinized frame by frame. How you judge a manager might be the last arbitrary thing. Now, you have a manager of the year vote, so I thought it'd be a fun couple-minute discussion here before games get going in the 2025 season. And I'll say my spiel, and then I'll kind of throw it to you. You're in a clubhouse with 26, go the number when you start out, in spring training, and those obviously interchange. So you're having 40, 50 guys, I'm just making up numbers, that you share buses, planes, locker rooms with, and you have to command all of them, and you have to have a sense for all of them for 162 games, hopefully more. I look at how players talk about managers and the way that they are revered and trusted. You don't have to be feared, but revered and trusted. And AJ has quotes like that in spades. We've heard this on this, heard that on this podcast. You hear that from other players. The fact that, the Carlos Correa thing that we've joked about, that's a real thing. That's a real relationship thing, to drop off gifts for a former player that, is about to have a baby. Austin Jackson on this podcast has talked about some of those things with Jim Leland and why that worked. And that's obviously Leland and Hinch come from different eras of the game. So I kind of look at the way people talk about you and how much of a leader you are, because those things I think are, I don't want to say more important, but anyone can probably figure out, look at the stats and be like, yeah, it's probably better to put a lefty here against this lefty hitter. Not everybody has a feel for people, if that makes sense. Not to dismiss all the other stuff that AJ does, but I feel like he has a good feel for people. I think he has a good feel for you guys in the media. So I just think those are the kind of the qualities that I judge managers based on. And obviously it's a win-loss league. You got to win games, but that's kind of my spiel. Cody, what about you?
Wait, what's the question here?
Well, how do you judge a manager? How do
I,
you
mean,
measure a
I
manager?
think we got a question about manager war. Like, is there a manager war? There's not like an official one. You can do some deep dives on the internet and find a couple of attempts to quantify managers or create some sort of manager war. None of them are fully satisfying to me. A common one you'll see is basically based on like Pythagorean record, so runs allowed, runs scored. You can project a record based on that, and then did the team exceed those expectations? That's kind of like a I don't know, like I don't think that really accounts for the nuance of what goes into winning a game or not winning a game. I don't know, like it doesn't really explain how those overachieving or underachieving happened. So that's why it's hard. That's why I talk about manager of the year being a very difficult vote. I do think it's funny now. AJ's number one on all these lists. I think I've seen at least two, but I was the only one who voted for him for manager of the year. I was on an island then. Where were you guys? Um, but it's so hard, and there are good tactical managers who maybe don't have great clubhouse skills, and there are great clubhouse managers who maybe aren't as good tactical managers. I don't know that there's a great way to quantify it, even with all the metrics we have, there's a reason no one's come up with a great way to quantify a manager. You just can't quite do it. And it's not like football where you can base everything on scheme and like how innovative is this. I don't have a great answer to this question. I've thought about it a lot. I think the best thing to do is watch a game and think, did the manager manage this game well, or did he manage this game poorly? That's subjective, but I've watched a lot of games, and about 95% of them I've walked away saying, and AJ Hinch managed that game very well.
Yeah, you also spent some time with the new White Sox manager, Will Venerable, and that's going to be one of his challenges. He's, again, one of those younger guy, former player types. We'll see how he does.
Yeah, real quick while we're on that. Yeah, so I wrote a profile of Will Venable in The Athletic. Why did this highly sought after managerial candidate sign up to manage the White Sox? He had declined other interviews before. So hope you guys will go check out that story, give some insight into a division rival as well. One of the interesting things Chris Getz in that story said, I think the manager job is bigger than it used to be. And that's worth noting too. Like some managers, I don't think Bruce Bochy, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, I don't think Bruce Bochy's paying that much attention to prospects. Some managers have more power than others, more say than others. One reason Venable went to the White Sox, he was going to be given a hand in building the systems, whatever that means, but how they do things. I'm sure he will be involved in player development and free agent acquisitions and a lot of the things that are a little bit in the mold of an AJ Hinch in terms of just having more of a hand on the whole organization. Not every manager is like that, but some managers are great at that. Some managers have no involvement. That's something you can't quantify.
Yeah, there you go. And now also great insight because few things get me going. Like, why did person X take X job? It's like, man, there's not a lot of these jobs, and you get an opportunity to do something like that. Like, it's hard to turn down.
I don't know if I would have signed up for the White Sox job, man. It's tough. Venable is super smart. I like Chris Getz a lot too. These guys could do great work and still just be fired in 4 or 5 years. It's just how it goes. It's tough.
There's no arbitration, and contracts are guaranteed, so it's not all that bad. All right. Speaking of not guaranteed, I had a thought, Cody. I was going through the thought exercises, and I was like, how certain are we about Trey Sweeney making this team? Because it was like an assumption, I would say, kind of before we got an idea of Javier Baez's health. Javier Baez is on the track. I forget what term they use in the injury report that they put out, but it's like, baseball activities and return to play program or whatever they're saying. But he's doing a lot. It seems like he's doing a lot. He's going through the tests, and he's got 3 years. He's going to be playing baseball for the Detroit Tigers unless somebody just really needs somebody with the initials JB on their roster, and they decide to trade for him. Highly unlikely, but I guess
no one's trading for Avi Baez.
I think highly unlikely, I would say. So the Sweeney part of it, we talked about McKinstry, and maybe there's a big brain element there from the front office, but Sweeney all of a sudden, like, if you think McKinstry's guaranteed, and obviously Hobby ain't going anywhere, and you do the roster thing like we did earlier this last week, things are getting crunched. And I'm like, are we not giving enough weight to the possibility of Trey Sweeney not starting the year in Detroit? Keep in mind, as crucial and as memorable as he was, it's not like he had a lot of playing time. Like he was a starter every day, but he logs 110 at bats, is what I'm saying. It's not like he's an established major leaguer. So as fun as it was watching him. So what do you think? What do you think about Trey Sweeney? Is roster standing as of now?
Well, I think we are giving it weight. That's why we're talking about it right now, because the closer you look, the easier it is to see a world in which Trey Sweeney begins the year in Toledo, and that's highly surprising in some ways. We did a roster projection a couple episodes ago. I had Sweeney on, and I had Zach McKinstry off. I'm not sure it's a coincidence that the next day A.J. Hinch was asked about McKinstry and gave what I think was his most glowing quote or review of a player all spring. I don't have the whole thing transcribed, but part of it was, we've had a lot of talks behind the scenes about how valuable his role is and where he fits. AJ said several more sentences or paragraphs about McKinstry, and after that I was like, he's going to be on the team, isn't he? But if you don't get what I'm saying, I'm telling you, just attempt to draw out a lineup against left-handed pitching, and I have a very hard time seeing Trey Sweeney, Jace Young, and Zach McKinstry all being on this team. Maybe I'm wrong, but we know how much the Tigers care about matchups and platoons, and so it's like, which one of those guys are you going to choose? McKinstry, we talked about, the Tigers could easily DFA him and get him back, but he is out of options. Sweeney and Young have options. Jace is your only left-handed third baseman. Sweeney and McKinstry are both left-handed shortstops. Kind of a duplicate role, but McKinstry also plays outfield. McKinstry has more experience. After listening to A.J. Hinch this week, I think if I were to redo that roster projection, I would put Trey Sweeney in Toledo. I'm not sure that's necessarily what I would do if I were running the Tigers, but I think there's a, very real chance that can happen, which is kind of surprising. It wasn't that long ago Scott Harris said, we think we got an everyday shortstop in Trey Sweeney, and they may still feel that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how the Tigers are going to break camp. Keep in mind, we're one injury away from none of these talks mattering at all. So
yeah, and look, like I said, he only had 110 at-bats. That's 119 plate appearances, 218 average, 4 home runs. He doesn't register enough to get on the percentiles on a lot of this stuff, but it's very clear if you look at his profile on Baseball Savant that the dude can swing the stick with the best of them in terms of bat speed. He has a really, really, really good hard hit percentage, and he is capable of launching that ball off his bat at a high velocity. Now, there's a lot of holes. I won't say a lot, but there are obvious holes to what, and look, he hit 218, so it's not like I'm breaking news here, but there are holes to his offensive game. But there is enough there that it's like, man, if you could really hone in on that, you kind of have something. And I like to get to Trey Sweeney to be something is still a good thing. I don't want to make it seem like I'm, downgrading his status on the team. But if he were a pitcher, Feder and Hinch and company would be able to put him in the most opportune spots to use his 2 or 3 best attributes. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily work like that as a hitter. Just for people that are curious, for fielding, he ranks in the 79th percentile for range, 27th percentile for arm strength, and he's also in the 73rd percentile for speed. So take that for whatever it's worth. I think there's still a lot to unpack here with Trey Sweeney. I just don't know again, if you have the ability to give him all the reps needed to unpack that. So maybe Toledo wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, as you said, an injury away, and none of this matters. All right, let's end on this, Cody. There was a special guest today. Obviously, it's not a guest. That's a joke. There was a new old familiar face on the field in Lakeland today, and that was one Mr. Chris Ilitch. Now, the last time that I saw him on my screen as consistently was when he was getting doused in various beer brands in the clubhouse at Comerica Park. That was probably his last most public appearance. And, kudos to him for turning up. That looked like a lot of fun. He does look like he's still in pretty good. He looked in good shape then, Cody. He still looks in pretty good shape right now. Maybe he should get in the batter's box against Jackson Jobe.
I did see him do like a weird batting stance at one point. I think maybe they were talking about like how to game the ABS, but regardless, we're out on Chris Ilitch being in the box. We are in on Chris Ilitch being the clear-cut winner of the best shape of his life award. This dude coming off divorce has gotten jacked. He looks great. So I did have the thought, like, if you're Chris Ilitch and you're trying to get in shape, what's your move? You probably just hire somebody to be like, hey, could you turn my 8th bedroom into a world-class gym real quick? But I was like, is there any chance Chris Ilitch just like rolls into an LA Fitness or something? Or like, I guess Detroit Athletic Club maybe is an option, but does he mingle with the people there? I don't know the answers to these things, but he's our clear-cut winner. There's just no doubt about it.
Hey, look, man, I think if I was the owner of a professional team, there's a lot of motivation to stay in shape because it's like I'm around the people that are like the cream of the crop when it comes to physiques and all that stuff. I don't want to look out of place here. That's great motivation. That's great motivation, and perhaps a divorce is also among the top motivations there. I wonder if he also has a Trans Am. All right, enough midlife crisis stuff.
We keep going with these jokes, but we're not going to.
No, we're gonna stop right there because I think we exhausted it. But look, I always support people for taking care of their health. So kudos to Chris Ilitch for being in tremendous shape. I'm not one of those people that hates people that go to the gym in January of every year. All right. That was fun, Cody. Next time that we talk, there will be games to talk about that we can say we're not going to overreact and then kind of analyze, every small little thing. I look forward to doing that for the first time in 2025. Please follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Cody Stavenhagen. I'm at Kieran_Steckley, pod page at Tiger Territory _YouTube, Instagram. Subscribe to us as we continue to grow the show, and we could not do it without you. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I'm Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great weekend.